Thank you everyone for being here. Ooh, thank you everyone for being here. So, we have a fantastic panel planned for this session with some great leaders from Northern California who are going to be telling us about some of the strategic initiatives that they're leading. I'm Whitney, I'm one of the co-leads of the San Francisco chapter, and, ooh, yeah, San Francisco. And I'm excited to introduce our panelists. We're gonna hear a little bit from each of them to start, and then a follow-up that I'll be prompting them with, and then we'll have a lot of time for audience questions at the end too. So be thinking along the way what you wanna learn from these incredible leaders on stage. So my first introduction here is Tony Sirna, who's the Data and Strategy Coordinator for CCE and a group leader of the Alameda County chapter. He's the one making sure our technology is working and empowering our volunteers to maximize our effectiveness in solving climate change. He's also a leader in strategic planning, helping to clarify organizational priorities and maximize our effectiveness. And before joining CCE, Tony was the founder of the Dancing Rabbit Eco Village, a sustainability demonstration project in northern Missouri. So take it away, Tony, with your introduction.
Hello. So yeah, it's my pleasure to be the strategy coordinator for CCL staff and also a leader on the strategic planning action team, which is a volunteer team, which you all can be a part of as well. And what we do on both of those strategy teams is try to look around the curve at what's going to be happening next. You know, it's easy to get sort of heads down and like, what do we need to do today? What do I need to do tomorrow? How do I get that tabling presentation done? Or how do I get that website, to work tomorrow? But we also need to be looking what's happening 6 months down the road, what's happening a year from now. How do we go from where we are now to where we need to be to pass the bill and to, solve climate change? And so that, that work is always just like taking that break, taking a step out or a step back and looking at the bigger picture, looking at what we need to be doing to make that kind of progress, and what do we need to be working on now to pave that way for that future. And so, a lot of that on the staff involves like sort of working across departments, coordinating our efforts, making sure that we're collaborating really smoothly, integrating the work of our program team, integrating the work of our legislative team, marketing, all of those things, making sure that we're all of those are working in concert together. And also with the volunteers, it means helping volunteers understand our national strategy and our international strategy, while also helping volunteers learn to think strategically at the local level. How can your chapter be doing these things, working in concert, looking around the curve, planning for the future, laying the groundwork now for that success? So that's my role, one of my roles in the organization right now, and I'll leave it at that.
Thank you. Thank you. So Janet Atkinson is a former elementary educator. Finding the spiral of science about climate change, Janet was drawn to schools for climate action. From her home in Tahoe, Janet enjoys connecting with people, building networks of students, teachers, and parents, and climate-concerned organizations around the nation. And she coaches people on how to ask their school boards to take a stand. Janet heads to the Capitol Hill this March with youth adult teams to share climate action resolutions representing hundreds of thousands of students, and she hopes your district will be included.
Thank you. I was impressed with Dan Kamen, and he opened with a statement that he's happy that you're here helping, as I am, CCLers, because we're looking out for our next generation. And that's where the initiative Schools for Climate Action comes in, that I'd like to share with you about. What Schools for Climate Action is a youth adult campaign, grassroots, nonpartisan, started by a CCLer from Santa Rosa, Park Guthrie, and his children. So we actively work with middle schoolers and high schoolers in asking school boards and other organizations in the educational sector to speak up for climate action on behalf of current and future generations. How we're doing that is through resolutions. And it can be from school boards, and at this time we have 30 school boards in 5 states that have passed climate action resolutions. These are no-cost statements that include a recognition that climate change is a generational justice issue, celebrates and expands the responses by school districts to climate change, and each resolution, we hope, will ask Congress to act. So it's a vehicle for creating political will. Why this is effective is that school boards and other educational sector leaders, such as and we're not talking just local, county and state school boards, and the National School Boards Association is also looking to pass a resolution this March, a climate action resolution. And how this works is that these resolutions come from the educational sector, which is uniquely qualified to speak for our generations, the health and well-being of children and the future generations to come. So that is so effective, and we've already talked to members of Congress, and they have told us that this is definitely something that can be of value in moving our country forward. In fact, when you think about it, there are 14,000 school districts across the nation, nearly 100,000 elected members, of which we are all constituents. And what I'm trying to do, and helping Park and the other people in this campaign, is to let people know that everybody can do something as easy as emailing a school board member. In fact, out of our 30 resolutions, 20% have passed just based on one email or someone talking to a school board member. So these are values that our campaign has in common with all of the other things that CCL does in building relationships and getting people to understand that everybody's a constituent. So whether or not you have kids in the school district, you are a constituent of those elected leaders, even as a taxpayer. So we're just asking for everybody's help. We are not only working in California, we have 5 states involved, but we have more. We have 10 that are active right now, 10 other states. Lots of other school districts are close to passing. We have the DC trip in March. And so we're asking everybody, if every CCLer could just pass, look at their school district website and send an email, that would be such a big help. And you wouldn't believe how school districts will do this. They just don't even know that this is an option. And many times we find the snowball effect when you have school districts nearby who've done that. So it's in the Bay Area especially. I'm just really getting the word out that if your school district hasn't yet passed a school district resolution, please send an email to someone on it, because it really can be effective. And you just think of the power that we as CCLers have to bring this about. So I better stop right there. I can go on and on. I'm part of the breakout session this afternoon, so I have more to share with you on how to get started. We're also starting to work with Patagonia. We're holding a Teens for Climate Action event at one of the Patagonia stores. And so we can see that this is a really great way to get our next generation involved and to help speak on their behalf. Thank you.
Thank you. All right. So Steve Hams is a principal of leading change consulting and coaching, and with a background in organizational behavior, he provides executive coaching and organizational change consulting to a wide variety of leaders across many industries. He regularly leads...
That's not me, actually. That's not me.
Oh, shoot. Oh, my gosh.
We have him in the audience, actually. That's Steve.
I took the wrong bio. All right.
I can just introduce myself. How about
He's
that?
an incredible leader of our Business Climate Leaders program, and I'll let him take it from there.
It's the confusion of two Steves on the BCL team. We actually have Steve Levin in the audience, so welcome, welcome. Yeah, I'm Steve Hams. I'm been with CCL for about 5 years with the Silicon Valley North chapter. And before joining CCL, I had a 30-plus year career in Silicon Valley, mostly in high tech. So naturally, when I joined CCL, I was particularly interested in business outreach. And that opportunity became available several years ago when Harold Hedelman, who is the principal founder of BCL, was inspired by a talk by Bill Shireman, who is the CEO of Future 500 in San Francisco. He spoke at a CCL event, and he made a compelling case that businesses, in particular those that were consumer-oriented, would do very well under CF&D, particularly because the dividend is such an economic driver. So shortly thereafter, Harold ran a workshop at one of these Northern California conferences. I joined that, and we created a team, and we were off and running. And since then, we've made tremendous progress. We established our vision of engaging businesses in climate advocacy, climate legislation advocacy, and particularly helping them get to endorsing our particular solution. So over that time, we've generated tremendous participation in BCL. We have a group of, I'd say, several dozen who are very actively involved, and many hundreds that are on our mailing list that we stay in touch with. We're run by a steering committee, about 8 or 10 of us. We meet weekly to plan our long-term goals and objectives, as well as our short-term actions and priorities. We have 3 major areas of focus. One is we work with Fortune 1000 companies. We organize those activities by industry sector. Secondly, we work with chapters, in particular with their Grasstops outreach. And thirdly, we plan, organize, and run major events. So let me give you a couple of examples of these. The best example, I think, or one great example of working with Fortune 1000 companies is we were able to develop a relationship with Silicon Valley Leadership Group, which is the major industry group in Silicon Valley, several years ago. And since then, we've run 2 convenings, we've called them, with 15 very large, some of the highest, the biggest name technology companies here in Silicon Valley. And we educated them on carbon pricing and our legislation in particular. And out of that, after 2 meetings with them, they decided to fund a study which would indicate what the effect of carbon fee and dividend, or EIC, or Energy Innovation Act at this point, would be on the technology industry in general and their companies in particular. That study is almost done, a couple more months, and we'll be able to take that back to the larger group and use that to further our conversation with them about collective advocacy, which is the goal of bringing them together. If we can get them to advocate for the bill as a collective group, that would be very, very powerful. Another example of major events, we ran, I don't know how many of you attended our Carbon Tax Forum in San Francisco in September, many of you. We were an affiliate event of the Global Climate Action Summit, and we had our event. We had a great range of speakers. We had 250 people in attendance there and over 350 people live streamed. So it was a great way for us to connect with many new businesses, individuals, and business-oriented NGOs. So that's a little bit about BCL, and during the question and answer, I look forward to answering more questions. Thanks.
All right. Hopefully I have the right bio this time. So Connie Young is a registered nurse and the group leader for the Fresno chapter. She's the mother of 2 adult daughters, one a marine scientist specializing in sea otters, who's also a CCL member, and the other is the animal curator for the Conservation Center in the Bahamas. For their sake and for the creatures they're trying to protect, she retired a little bit early to work on solutions to climate change. Take it away.
Okay, thank you. It's good to be here. So I'm in the Heartland region, which is the Central Valley and Sierras. It goes from Redding to Bakersfield. And most of the congressional districts in the Heartland area are very conservative or moderately conservative. And this creates some challenges. And so here are some of the things that we're doing about that. There's something called the Inland Travel Ship, which is a program that in which chapters which are more in more progressive areas that are more affluent are asked to contribute to help students in chapters that are in more conservative districts, help those students to go to the conference in Washington, D.C. And those students receive $500 from the travel ship, and then their student's chapter matches that $500 with another $500 for a total of $1,000. So last year, 6 NorCal students were able to attend the conference, and some of them are here today. This year's program is expanding to include Southern California chapters in conservative districts. So the name has changed from the Heartland to the Inland Travel Ship. If you'd like to donate, you can go to the GoFundMe site, which is cclusa.org/travelshipca. In response to California's devastating wildfires, Jerry Hinkle and Dana Nusatelli have created a powerful presentation called Climate Change and California Wildfire Risk: What We Know, What We Can Do. It explains the link between climate change and increased wildfires, and it's also a call to action to help ensure a safer future. We all need to learn how to talk more effectively about this issue. If you're interested, contact Jerry Hinkle. I don't know, are you here, Jerry? Back there. So he can come add you to the road show. So here's some of what the chapters are doing. Sadly, Chico was ground zero for the Camp Fire, as many of the Paradise survivors moved there or took refuge there. At least 3 individuals who have attended Chico meetings lost their homes in the fire. Next week, they're going to be sponsoring a forum on climate change and wildfires. In Fresno, we're fortunate to have a dynamic group of high school students and college students. They've done outreach to the Latinx community and given presentations to city councils. 3 went to the national conference, and 1 who couldn't go actually participated in a lobby meeting via Facebook Messenger. 2 of them are liaisons to our members of Congress. 1 runs our Instagram account. They are a tremendous source of enthusiasm and pride for our chapter. And by the way, they're excellent magnets for our tabling efforts. People just kind of flock around when they see these young, smiling faces there. There's a new chapter in Nevada County which just completed its climate advocate training and broke an attendance record with 50 people. So, yeah, congratulations. Reading chapter is going to be hosting a wildfire and climate change event. Roseville really needs to set up a chapter, and that can be done remotely by someone. If somebody would like to get involved in the CCL's Group Development Coach Program, that can actually be done, and you can see Jennifer Wood about that. So, thank you.
Thank you, Connie. So a couple follow-ups. Connie, back to you. You mentioned a couple ways that people can get involved to help chapters in the Heartland. You mentioned the travel ship, helping set up a Roseville chapter. Are there other ways that, say, chapters in the Bay Area can help you guys out?
Yeah, we're actually talking about the possibility of setting up kind of a buddy program or adopt a chapter program in which, again, resource intensive chapters, sometimes who have more people than they have jobs to do them, could help some of the more resource lacking chapters in the conservative areas. And so maybe they could, some of their volunteers could help do some things remotely, again, like help us with data entry or setting up spreadsheets or making phone calls or helping with social media and that type of thing that can be from a distance. And again, if you want to contribute to the travel fund, you can go to the cclusa.org/travelshipca.
Awesome. All right, Steve. So can you give us an example of how BCL, Business Climate Leaders, works with local chapters to engage with businesses?
Yeah, happy to. First, a shout out to Bruce Hagan, who runs our Go Team focus, and he also is our tremendous, like our chief operating officer for BCL, so keeps us on track all the time. Yes. So a great example, yeah, thanks, Bruce. A great example of one that working with local chapters that Bruce really drove was with one of our Iowa chapters. He helped train them on business outreach, and they created train both the leader and the team. And the leader of their Go team, the Grasstops outreach team, shortly thereafter literally had an over-the-fence conversation with her next-door neighbor, who happened to be a program manager with Nordex Accioni, which is a very large international wind company, project manager there. She talked with them about CCL, about our policy, at that time CF&D. He said this would be great for the wind industry and our company in particular. He says, I would love to champion this inside the company. And he did so, and not much longer after that, they were able to set up a meeting with the CEO of the North American business unit. Nordex Accioni is actually an international company. And Bruce and our BCL team helped plan that meeting and participate in it. And shortly into the meeting, the CEO said, I get it, this would be perfect for us. Where do I sign on the dotted line to endorse the bill and or the policy? And at this point now we're talking with him about endorsing the bill. So that's one outstanding example of working with local chapters.
All right, Janet, if I want my school district to pass a climate action resolution, where would I start?
It's really pretty simple. It's with an email or a conversation. So I can't say that enough. We had just last week a resolution that passed in the Santa Barbara Unified School District. And we actually, through our initiative, the people that work on it had no contact with anyone there. But it was a teacher that Googled schoolsforclimateaction.org. It's a very comprehensive website that we've put together. Well, actually, Park has put it together. And it's got everything you could possibly need, including links to all the resolutions that have passed, so you can actually see the language that's in it. And simply, I would suggest just send an email to a school board member asking that they pass a climate action resolution and link a resolution or two to them, which you can find on the schoolsforclimateaction.org website. It's important to not overthink it. It is that easy, and if it's not that easy, there's just a couple other steps that can be taken that still I consider easy. But the thing is, we are going on a timeline, as we know, with climate change, and there are students directly affected by the trauma of climate-related events, such as the wildfires, and of course in the Bay Area, the smoke. And so if you're writing an email to your board members or your trustees, or you're even a student and you want to pass your own student council climate action resolution, all of these things are taken into account and could be mentioned in the resolution itself or in requesting that the school board pass a resolution. Those are some really compelling reasons. And we're just trying to say, don't overthink it. Just please get started and just send an email to somebody that can help us pass these resolutions. Thank you.
Thank you. And finally, Tony, what do you think are the most strategically important things for Northern California CCLers to be working on right now?
Thank you. Well, a lot of them are going to be similar to what CCLers all over the country should be working on. And so one of those is, building your relationship with your member of Congress, securing their support for our bill, or even more specifically, helping move them up the ladder of support. And so wherever your member of Congress is, Whether they're Anna Eshu, who is, you know, a champion, she can still do more. You can move her up the ladder to being even more of a champion. And if you've got someone who's down in the basement at the not even on the first rung of the ladder, you can move them up to just being less resistant, and that's, you know, progress. And so, you know, that's really a critical thing, and that flows from a lot of our other actions. And one of the big actions right now is just education. We really, I mean, the bill is out, we all know about it, but most people do not know about it. And so one of my theories is that, you know, our bill is not going to pass until it's a household word and everyone knows, like, yeah, how come they haven't passed that Energy Innovation Act yet? You know, so we need to make sure that the public knows, thought leaders know, the media knows, your member of Congress knows, you know, all of those people need to know about this. So there's a lot of work right now to be done just in educating all of those people in all of those different ways. And that's from the little things of sharing it on Facebook to giving presentations to letters to the editor. All of those things are critical right now. I do think there are some specific things in Northern California. I think it's great. I think that we have this panel up here because I think supporting the heartland is really critical. There's a lot of conservative areas in the state, and so if your chapter does have surplus energy, you know, supporting people in red districts and purple districts. We've got a bunch of new representatives now in California, and they're Democrats, but they're in, you know, districts that just flipped, and so they still are going to need a lot of support to move them up the ladder. They need to be educated, and we need to help build the capacity of our chapters in those areas so that they can be doing that work. And I think we in the Bay Area can be supporting a lot of those chapters. And I think, you know, when we're going out and we're educating, that includes elected officials, that includes school boards, I think it includes children. We need to be, you know, leveraging everyone to do that. And of course, it includes businesses as well. We've got a lot of influential businesses in California, and getting them on board can really be important. I think there's work to be done with our state elected officials to educate them about our policy and how it will help California, how it will interact with our policies here in California, how it will bring everyone else along to follow California's leadership. There's no point in, it's not important that California is a leader unless other people will follow us. So, and then I think that we have a special place, especially in the progressive areas of our state, in building support among progressives, building support among left-leaning groups, whether that's climate activist groups, labor organizations, and other sort of like people focused on justice. And we are in a position where, you know, if your member of Congress is on board, you know where they are on the ladder, you're slowly, politely moving them up that ladder, but you've got to build the support with the other, you know, constituencies, the other stakeholders in this effort. And so that's something that we can do that will bear fruit far beyond just our district. It will help nationally as we build support among those constituencies. And then the key to doing all of that is building the capacity of our chapters. And so as we work over these next, you know, few months and over this year, it's going to be a lot of work in terms of integrating the new people who are enthusiastic about the bill, re-energizing people who have been on your list for years and now we're like, oh, this is really happening, let's get going. And just building our capacity in all of our chapters so that we can work on all of these different fronts at once. So you can say, oh yeah, we should be doing school boards and municipal resolutions and this other thing, and like you have the capacity to do all of those things in concert. So that's my list.
Awesome. So what we're going to do now is put one mic in each of the aisles. If you wouldn't mind donating a mic. Is that stand still there? And we have time for audience questions.
I have a question about, you know, when we've collected endorsements for CFD, should we now be going back to those endorsers to get a new endorsement for the EICD? Is that important to do?
Yes. You should definitely do that, and that includes things like municipal resolutions. You should go back and ask them not just for endorsements, but are there other ways that they want to support the bill, whether that's talking to their colleagues, whether that might be even lobbying with you or hosting an event with your member of Congress. So this is a chance to both, reinvigorate that relationship that you have, get a new endorsement, which they can do easily at our website, the energyinnovationact.org, but also to say, and what else would you like to do to see this become law?
Great, thanks.
Yeah, from a business point of view, it's always been difficult for us to get businesses to endorse specifically carbon fee and dividend. We've done a lot of things to develop relationships with them, because many times we'd hear, well, we're not really likely to endorse until you actually have a bill. Well, now we actually have a bill. So it's a great opportunity for us to go back to those businesses that we've developed relationships with and talk with them exactly what Tony was saying about how to endorse the bill. So we're really looking forward to doing that.
In San Luis Obispo, we passed a school board resolution last year with the help of our CCL chapter, but it came from the students themselves through their leadership class, and that it was not controversial and got good press coverage and so forth. I'd like to remind everybody that the other Heartland, the Heartland Institutes, spent millions of dollars to send phony mailings to over 300,000 teachers in the United States. This was written up in various places saying, oh, we don't really know about climate change. There's all this doubt here and there, and people need to know about that. The journal Nature published a study saying only about a third of the science teachers felt competent to teach about climate change, felt that they were getting continuing education about it, and felt like they could really impart that knowledge to the kids. I think you'd agree with that.
Absolutely, and I wanted to say that is part of the impetus for this campaign and why we started it. It's that there is a spiral of silence in the educational sector, and of course, the Heartland's information has not been helpful in that, and to break that. So by these resolutions, it's more, acknowledging the fact that climate change is an issue for our students, and if we just get beyond the questionable things and really get into what is real and validate that it's important. So,
Just wanted to add that our new organization is called the Medical Society Consortium on Climate Change and Health. We're based at George Mason University there near DC in Alexandria. I've told her about you and your March, or your visits in March, and I hope she'll help you about that. She wants to do that.
We have a lot of East Coasters joining us in DC for our climate advocacy days that Schools for Climate Action is putting together. We have probably 10 to 20 people from the West Coast flying out at the end of March, and then we have hundreds of people joining us, a lot of youth from the East Coast. And we're going to deliver our resolutions to the Hill, to every member of Congress's office. We have meetings set up with members of Congress and a press conference that involves other organizations, environmental organizations, as well as members of Congress and other leaders. So, yeah, thank you.
Is there a resolution online that would be available, or different types of variations of the resolution?
Yes. So, schoolsforclimateaction.org is the website. It has all the 30 resolutions, so you can see the varying languages. The more recent ones are outstanding as far as what language. And when I've talked with school board members, and we're in that phase, as to if they ask, what can we do, how do we do this, you can give them sample resolutions from those that have already passed. But we also have, the website is very comprehensive, and it has templates for not only your letters, but other, just general templates for resolutions that are available for you to print out or download and send.
Are there any for city councils?
We're focusing on the ed sector. It has been mentioned, it actually is something that happens. So once a school board passes a resolution, then especially us CCLers know how to leverage that. and we bring it to other sectors in society, such as government, city government, and so on, to say, look, your school board believes this, and we're speaking, all the generations to come are impacted. So, and we have the youth in your area that are speaking up for this too. So, asking, therefore, using that as a piece for city governments and other resolutions to pass.
Great, thanks.
Mhm.
Thank you.
So, and if you are looking for municipal resolutions, there are examples on CCL's website, as well as help in getting the templates for that. If you go to community, there's some material there, and we're developing new ones specifically for the Energy Innovation Act. So those are available, will probably be available this upcoming week.
This is maybe more for Tony about stratagem. With obviously the introduction of the bill, the whole game changes in terms of acceleration of activity that needs to take place in a much smaller window of time than we thought maybe we had previously. What is the board or CCL's approach to spending a lot more time and energy in fundraising, of seeking out big pockets, medium pockets, and small pockets to get the kind of resources to greatly expand the activity of people here, but in all sorts of ways to get the message out in a more wholesale rather than retail fashion?
The bill coming out obviously invigorates a lot of different things. It helps us with our work in Congress, it helps us with businesses, it also helps us, grassroots, and it helps us with funders as well. And so it was a big boost for our fundraising appeal at the end of the year, and it's also going to help us with foundations in the years to come. And there was a time when CCL measured its progress by our output in terms of, we published this many letters and we got this many articles and we have this many members, and now we measure our progress with, we had this impact on Congress, they did this thing, it's much more tangible. We're measuring our impact rather than our output, and that's something that big funders want to see. They want to see that impact. And so we have a dedicated development team that is doing that fundraising, and it is a critical time for us, because I do think that, I don't know how many of your chapters saw an influx of people based on the bill, but that there's a lag between that and when the money comes in to then build more support for the organization, whether that's to hire more staff or to do more, to be able to fund more marketing or advertising or outreach efforts. And so it is a critical time. If you have connections with funders, please talk to Lene, who's here this weekend. But and if you have ideas, I'm sure she'd be happy to talk as well. But it is critical, because we could easily grow this organization tremendously. Money is still one of the limiting factors. It's not the only limiting factor, but it is one of the limiting factors in our growth.
Okay, thanks.
Hi. The person who mentioned that only a third of science teachers feel competent to teach on climate change made me wonder about if Schools for Climate Action, if you're doing in concert with the resolutions, if you're doing offering presentations, or because it seems to me that especially if a school board passes a resolution on Schools for Climate Action, that the conjunction of civics with science would be a really fruitful place and something that a school might really want. But I can also see that it could be sort of politically divisive, although CCL being nonpartisan and having bipartisan support, that's a benefit. So that's hopefully a good.
Right. Well, there are some really great points to this initiative, and that is that it's youth and adults together. So when youth speak to their school board members, who we call trustees, because we put our trust in them to protect our students. So it's really powerful that it's coming from students, that they're asking their school board to speak up and on climate action. And as far as climate literacy, there is kind of some gaps here and there. Many districts, and we have the next generation science standards that promote climate literacy throughout the grades. So we're trying not to delve in and kind of blur the lines between what we're asking for. We're just asking for school districts to use their power to further ask Congress to take action on climate. So in the resolution itself, many school districts will celebrate the fact that they are offering climate literacy in their curriculum, or they want all of their students to be climate literate or learn about climate change. So that is one of the mentions in many of the resolutions because that's their response to climate change, is one of the things that they do. But as far as this campaign, we're not trying to get into that piece with the education. This is about climate action. And students hopefully are learning about climate change, but this is just kind of like the next step, and especially empowering those students, because that's the kind of the disconnect when we have students who know that this is such a serious issue, especially to their futures, but they feel like they don't have the pieces that will help them to do something about it. You know, the school districts, they see are changing their energy sources, and kids are learning about recycling and so on, but what more can they do? Well, they can actually affect policy, you know, so by starting with their own school district and school board members, or their own student councils.
Thank you.
Yes, thank you.
Yep, one more. If you keep it short.
Okay, great. Don Gady from Fresno. Tony Sirna, I think you mentioned that most people don't know about this bill yet, and somebody else mentioned funding opportunities. I've seen full-page ads in the Wall Street Journal about certain issue, climate. Can we fund full-street ads in our newspapers, the Fresno Bee, the Sacramento Bee? That would get the word out.
Yes, that would be great. You're welcome to do that. I'm not sure that there is funding from national to do that at this point, or when we actually have money at that scale that we could do advertising, we'd have to think about what's the most effective way to do that, whether that's online or in newspapers, and who are we trying to influence, and maybe it's exactly in the Fresno Bee, or maybe it's in the Wall Street Journal, or maybe it's online on with Facebook ads or something. We don't know, because we haven't had the capacity to do that, but it is on our radar. So, but yes, chapters are welcome to innovate and do whatever they can to get the word out in your district and what you think is going to be most effective, and then tell us how it goes.
I just want to give a big shout out to the Travel Shop, and this is a really great thing to do for students. So please contribute generously. If you're in an inland chapter, find students and give money to your chapter. If you don't have a student to sponsor, give money. We went from 3 to 6. We'd like to go to at least 10 or 12 this year, and it's a great investment in the future.
All right, thank you, and thanks to all of our panel members, to Whitney for moderating.